Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you all, and His mercy, as well as His grace and His forgiveness. We thank Allah for bringing us together today. I thank Allah especially for allowing me to come here and to present in this honorable forum, speaking to an honorable group of people as Allah refers to those who believe, and speaking to those who are simply willing to listen and looking for some good information, inshallah. I welcome you to another edition of Masjid New Africa's Masjid New Africa Center for Human Development Sunday public address. Alhamdulillah. This is a day where we like to speak to the public, and we like to speak in general terms to individuals who may or may not be Muslim. We like to speak in a way that will endear people who are Muslim, endear them to their religion, and inspire them to continue to try and strive and be better Muslims, and to encourage those who may be curious, or maybe you've heard some things about Islam. Perhaps you're just, scrolling through the internet and you just happened upon this particular station and this show. So this is actually for you. You didn't come here by chance. You were divinely guided. Why do I say that? Because we believe that all things are through the command of Allah. The command of Allah, and there is nothing outside of the command of Allah. So if you ended up here today watching this show, it was definitely meant to be, and you are definitely in the place you're supposed to be, at least for the next 45 minutes, inshallah, God willing. So with that, the topic of my subject today is one that's very important to me, one that is I have sometimes hesitated to speak upon, but I want to really dive into it because we're coming to a time of year where everybody's excited. We have a lot of programs going on within the community of Imam W.D. Muhammad, right? Within the ministry and the community of Imam W.D. Muhammad. So Masjid New Africa presents today my topic, which is titled Reflecting Upon the Ministry of Imam Muhammad Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. Now, if you're not a Muslim or you're new to the whole concept of Islam and the communities of Islam, then you happened upon the best place to be, because this topic today is really designed for people who may not be as familiar with Imam W.D. Muhammad, his who he is, and the things that he has done within his own community. The today's top topic subtitle is subtitled "A Talk About the Past, the Present, and the Future Relevance of His Ministry and His Contributions to Being Muslim in America." All right. So when we say relevant, what do we mean? Relevance. What do you mean? How you? And so for those who are already familiar with Imam W.D. Muhammad, you may say, well, of course he's relevant. But for those who are not, they may struggle to really understand why it is we have such reverence for him and why there's an entire community built around his mission. So today I want to answer what I want to answer today is some very simple and brief questions. And the first one in my discussion is, what is the importance of Imam W.D. Muhammad to the development of Islam in America? What is his importance? How what is his importance not only yesterday, but what is his importance to us today? And how does that relate to where we're going in the future as a community and really as a country? So anything that affects the community of Muslims also affects the country of the United States of America by extension. Why is that? Because there's a very large community of Muslim Americans, people who ascribe to the religion of Islam, that live in this country, that vote, that live right next door to you. Maybe they're your dentist. Maybe they're your doctor. Maybe they're your neighbor. Maybe they're your friend. Maybe they're just the guy driving down the road next to you, or the lady, right? In rush hour traffic. You're honking at them or they're honking at you. These are the people that surround us. We are you and you are us. I want to begin with a bit of a reflection upon the early days of Imam W.D. Muhammad. And this is not going to be an in depth historical. There's a lot that can be said, but as an organization, we want to make sure that as we go forward, people are understanding who we are and why we're doing the things we're doing, why we're saying the things that we're saying, why we relate in the way that we relate. So when we speak of Imam W.D. Muhammad, I noticed that sometimes people can be a little you get kind of get two attitudes, right? You get a couple of different attitudes. The one attitude is those who know him, they respect him, they have studied his words, they have listened to his lectures, and they are associated with his community. But the other is a person who is kind of allergic to his name. They get irritated when you mention his name. And they might even say things like, brother, you don't gotta mention W. Muhammad's name every time you make a statement. Or they may say something like, yeah, brother, I the masjid there, they always every other word he mentions W.D. Muhammad, right? We follow Prophet Muhammad, subhanAllah, right? And that's actually a fair assessment to a degree, because we do follow Prophet Muhammad. Yeah. We follow the Quran. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Yes, we do follow that, right? But the Prophet said, what is Islam? And then he responded by giving the answer. He said, Islam is sincerity. Nasiha. Nasiha. And nasiha is translated simply as good advice, good words, right? What is Islam? Islam is nasiha. And then he went on because he wanted the people to think. When the prophet would ever make a statement, he would make it in a way that would strike the intellect and cause the people to think. He wasn't just trying to give them the answer. He was trying to kind of lead them to it so they would understand the process of rational thought. He was waking them up to utilize their intellect, right? He didn't just want blind followers. He didn't just want people who fell in line and didn't ask questions or understand what they were doing. Islam is nasiha. Well, what is nasiha? Nasiha, the Prophet said, is sincerity. To whom? To Allah, His books, His prophets, the community of the believers, and the Muslim leadership. Ya Allah. Nasiha, sincerity to all of those things. And so when we speak about Imam W.D. Muhammad, I place him in that last category of Muslim leadership. To be sincere to your Muslim leadership. Well, so that means if a person has made you breakfast and they made it all nice and delicious and they served it to you and they put the napkin down and they had all the fixings and came, what would you say? And came and delivered, served it to you right, and attended to your needs, you would say thank you, wouldn't you? You might even make dua for them, right? You would be appreciative. Certainly, you would not go without acknowledging it. And I think sometimes, often, we come into the masjid, we associate in Islam, but we do not acknowledge the individuals who got us to where we are today. Because a lot of us would not be walking through the door of a masjid if it wasn't for this man, Imam W.D. Muhammad, who's the son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. May Allah forgive him of his sins. We know that he was a man who was conflicted in many ways, but I want to speak about that today. I want to speak about some of the good and some of the bad, inshallah. So let me reflect a little bit upon the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad. A man once asked W.D. Muhammad a question after go to Al Azhar. You didn't go to Al Azhar University. How do you know all this? The Imam smiled in the way that he does. And he said simply, he said, my Harvard was the streets, my Al Azhar was the Quran in English. Oh, so this was before he even had mastered the Arabic language. This was advice to the individuals he studied the Quran first in the language which he understood it. Our first language isn't English, isn't Arabic. For those who speak, whose first mother tongue is English, it's English. So Imam W. Muhammad was He always seemed to have just the right response when people would ask him a question. However, this wasn't always the case. This wasn't always the case. There was a time where his words really bothered people. They did not want to hear what he had to say. They really wished that he would, in fact, shut up. There was a time where his words made people angry because while true, they were disappointing to those who followed his father, especially those who had not yet paid enough attention to understand that the movement and the ministry of Elijah Muhammad was actually changing over time. That in the 1940s, in the 1950s, in the 1960s, with each successive decade, the changes would occur over time, even in his speech. And I want to speak a little bit about that today. So this wasn't going to be, so the Imam was a person who accompanied this change. And this wasn't going to be a change of the small fine print. This wasn't going to be a change of the little details. No, 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 no. This was going to be a momentous change. This was going to be one similar to when the Prophet ﷺ changed from the Qibla to which he was told to pray towards to the Qibla which he wanted to pray towards. And this change would mean something just as significant. For example, it would mean that God is not a man. Wow. And so that's simple to us today, right? For many of us who've been Muslim for a bit. Or if you were born Muslim and Al Islam, simple. But for those who were told that God was a man who came in the form of Master Fard Muhammad in 1930, and they believed it decade after decade after decade, dying believing this, some of them, family members believing this was not an easy thing for you to come and undo what had been done. The change that this prophet, that the last and final prophet and the last messenger of Allah was not the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, may ever much respect we have for him for what he did, for his contributions, but rather Muhammad ibn Abdullah of Arabia. This was a momentous change. This was a momentous change. And another aspect of that change was that the proper expression of Islam was not to hate the white man, say he was a devil, and desire to split from him in order to create a black African nation, but rather it was an expression of the 5 and the 7. What do you mean, brother? What's 5 and 7? Come on now. What's the 5 and the 7? 5 pillars. Allah. Islam sits on 5. What? To bear witness there is no God but Allah. To make the salat, to pay the zakat, to fast the siyam, to fast during Ramadan, and to make the hajj at least once in your life if you can do so. That is the 5. And what are the 7? The 7 articles of faith: to believe in Allah as He is and as He's described in the Quran, to believe in His prophets, to believe in His books, to believe in His angels, and to believe in His divine qadr, that all things are written by Him as He and act according to His command. So for this act that Imam W.D. Muhammad, by changing us the leadership, by changing the direction of the followers worshiping and following Elijah Muhammad to following Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam and worshiping Allah correctly, this was very, very challenging. And it took courage because many people resisted it. So today I did not come here to just talk about his achievements because many of us are familiar with this, but I came rather to talk about the significance of these achievements. I want to speak without shame or without hesitancy about the relevance of Imam W.D. Muhammad and the establishment of Islam as part of the beating heart and soul of America, not as a group of people who want to go and separate from America. To be clear, he taught us to be part of this country, not as immigrants, not as migrants, and not as people standing on the outside looking in, but as individuals and leaders building within the country itself, making it a better place for all of us to live in. So, to be clear, Imam W.D. Muhammad taught us not to be Muslims in America, but to be Muslim Americans. And there is a difference. Ya Allah. So today I want to talk a little bit about what that difference is. In addition, I'm going to speak briefly about what Imam W.D. Muhammad contributed to this very definition of what it means to be a native born Muslim American. And as well, in addition, I want to talk about how this has affected our lives today and how it has contributed to the arc of destiny. What do I mean by the arc of destiny? Meaning the direction that the United States has went as a people and as a nation. So I want to talk about how this has contributed, his contribution to the arc of destiny of Islam in America. In other words, to the development of Islamic life right here, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, inshallah. Let us begin. So the first segment is yesterday, history. Let's get into a little history. In order to understand where you're at today, you actually have to look back, right? If you're driving on a journey or you're walking, right, the first thing you do to kind of orient yourself is you'll look back. And when you look back, you're like, wow, I went through all of that. I walked through all. So it gives you what we call perspective. You got to have some perspective. So history orients us with perspective. So let us begin with a little bit of history. Basic history. I didn't go deep. I took the first one that popped up on the internet. Right? I typed in the question, what are some interesting stories about Imam W.D. Muhammad? I got books on him. I got books written by him, but I wanted to see what pops up. And this is what popped up. It was a citation from Wikipedia. This is what it said. It said, a son's conscience, right? Confronting truth over loyalty. In the early 1960s, while still known as Wallace Muhammad, a young minister within the Nation of Islam, he learned that his father, Elijah Muhammad, had fathered several children with younger women in the organization. These were behaviors that violated the strict moral code which had been taught by Elijah Muhammad. To be clear, he didn't teach what the Quran allows. He taught something different. He taught that men should only have one wife, which was unique to his teachings. Imam W.D. Muhammad, when he found this out, he informed Malcolm about these allegations. He actually went and told him, and I've heard this before. I've known about this. I've been told by several people, and I read this before, that he was the individual who informed Malcolm. And when Malcolm found out about it, of course, he was heartbroken, but basically he didn't believe it. He didn't believe it. This is the man's son coming to one of the followers of the organization and telling him something that really only a son would know. This is intimate information about the household of the family. So just to do this, to go outside of the family, would took an amazing amount of courage. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't idle gossip. He was telling Malcolm this because he understood that Malcolm was totally dedicated to his father and saw no wrong in him. And what wrong he saw, he overlooked it. So when he brought this to Malcolm, Malcolm had no choice but to look into these matters. And he looked into them and confirmed that they were true. So this happened around 1963. And though initially disputed, Malcolm did confirm the story. The revelation itself shook the confidence of many people, many followers inside the Nation of Islam, and it accelerated Malcolm's own departure from the group. Now, we know about that, and I'm going to stop there because when we look at the dynamic of this story, how many of us could have did that? What kind of courage did it take to knowing who your father is, knowing who Malcolm X was, to speak on something like this? And not just to mention it once, but to make sure that it was understood, the reality of the situation. And why does this even matter? Well, let me tell you why it matters. Number one, it was integrity over convenience. And this is what we don't see today in modern politics. Our leaders have a lack of integrity because they're only worried about today's convenience. what's okay for me today, what's going to get me where I want to be tomorrow. And if it doesn't contribute to that, then they don't want to talk about it. So our leader, Imam W.D. Muhammad, spoke at a time when silence could have shielded him and even preserved his worldly position. It would have done nothing but increase his power and authority because it was going to be handed to him from his father. So why shake the tree? Why make a problem? We could just keep Malcolm blind and just keep him running around doing all this great work and bringing in all the money and the followers and whatnot. But no, he didn't. He didn't think that way at all. In addition, this was a catalyst for a change that needed to come within the Nation of Islam itself. His actions helped bring about a reckoning within the leadership that sowed seeds of reform that would blossom into some of the benefits that we enjoy in our community today. In addition, it was a character snapshot. This demonstrates the leadership and the nature of Imam W.D. Muhammad's leadership and the way he guided it with courage and with sincerity, brothers and sisters. What did I say a moment ago? I began with what? The Prophet alayhi salam said, Islam is sincerity. To whom? To Allah, to his prophets, to the people, the general people. And so Imam W. Muhammad demonstrated excellent character. This moment is a cornerstone in understanding the Imam not just as a reformer, but as a person who was willing to challenge even his own father, whom he loved, if the situation demanded it. A couple of quotes that often stick in my mind that I love very much, and one is, "Our job is not to make people Muslim." These are some of his thoughts I want to share with you before we go forward. Our job is not to make people Muslim. Our job is to make the world see the excellence of Islam. Think about that. You think about the verse and the Surah Nur, and the verse where it talks about the light and how the light reflects out of the niche. So this is the nature of the Muslim, that we reflect the light. We are not the light. Allah is the light, but we reflect it through our actions, our thoughts, and our deeds. And so and this should make us excellent human beings, which is exactly what Imam W. Muhammad has instructed us through his teachings. And another one, very common, and that I researched and determined that the statement "man means mine" is attributed to Imam W.D. Muhammad. Now, I've heard it a lot, but I had to really do some research to find out who coined the phrase "man means mine." And from what I've seen, and if you see anything else different that contradicts it, please let me know, because I really tried to find anything other than his name. But so far, every time I come across the statement "man means mine," it was in reference or coming from his ministry or someone associated with the email. So, man means mine. And why did he coin this phrase? So that we would understand the essential core premise on which the man must act: rational thought, rational thinking. What does the Quran says? It says, "I came down to you." And the Quran was a book revealed in Arabic so that it may what? Make you think. It may inspire your intellect and your rational thought. Imam Muhammad introduced the concept of growing ourselves, our families, and our communities as social human beings. And this is a principle that we elaborate on a lot at Masjid in Africa. We speak about how the community is a garden, right? The community is a garden. You plant the seeds. If the just like the garden in the community, when you plant a good deed and you care for that, it will grow. You'll see the benefits, right? It will prosper. But when you neglect it, when you fail to put water, which is what? Moral life. When you fail to put sunshine, which is what? Divine guidance. When you fail to give it the right earth, which is what? The social environment with which the individual is rooted, this determines the nature of the fruit that comes about. And so these are the essential lessons that Imam Muhammad gave us. In addition, he helped us define one of the most important terms that we have come to apply to ourselves, which is the meaning, what it means to be a Muslim American. That's right. That's a new thing. That's a new thing. Didn't exist 100 years ago. We're not going to go back that far. I'm going to stay in modern history. Don't worry. I'm not going to take you to slavery today. I'm not going to go to Jim Crow today. All right. You're okay. We're going to stay in the 70s and above. His thoughts and his ideas inspired us to tap into our intellect and our un, uh, untapped superpowers, which all of us have. This highlights for us the nature of our approach to the Quran, which is one not based on the emotional approach, not based on the hyperbole, exaggerate. That's right. Alhamdulillah. Yes. Is there a moment where yes, there's probably that moment. But in general, the Imam wanted us to be sober, emotionally sober people. Let me repeat that statement. Imam Muhammad taught us to be emotionally sober people, meaning that we were not intoxicated on our own religious hyperbole and preaching and teaching, but rather we were intellectually, consciously aware of things that were being said. We were using critical thinking to apply them or to discard them. Apply them or discard them. And alhamdulillah, for those who were able to attend last night's summer session at Masjid W.D. Muhammad, it was excellent. And this is exactly what Imam Fahmy talked about. He talked about critical thinking and the ability to make informed decisions and positive assessments. Brothers and sisters, we are in a storm. If you lose me or whatnot, it may cut out for those who may be watching live. I apologize. We will just get right back in. So if you're patient, I'll just log back in a moment. Otherwise, if you see me going in and out, it's because I have a storm in the background. What is a Muslim American? And I left this up here. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, but I left this up here for a reason, if you notice. Imam W.D. Muhammad, excerpts and clips from 1997 Islamic Convention on New Africa. Now, I'm speaking in Masjid, New Africa, but in 1997, the concept of New Africa was still theoretical. So what that means is that his plan and his strategy worked. It paid off because we're actually speaking in an institution which at that time was only theoretical. What is a Muslim American? It's simply put a Muslim with generational roots in America. Some often African American, descendants of enslaved people, or someone who's born into or reverted to Islam in the American cultural context. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this and piece this apart, right? But I wanted to just get you rolling on the thought, on the definition of the word, and I want to talk about the importance of this. The importance of this principle, of this phrase, Muslim American, is often lost on most people. So let me be clear. Imam Muhammad took his followers from being observers to being participants. Imam Muhammad took his followers from being observers to being participants. Now, if you have ever been to a masjid that was, let's say, primarily Arab masjid, Pakistani masjid, or whatnot, you'll notice that no matter how long you stay there, you can only be an observer. And I don't even have to, I can say why, but for those who have been through this situation, you already know why. You already know why. So this is how it would have remained if not inspired by our leadership to not be satisfied with this. That first of all, every believing Muslim and right-minded Muslim is a leader because every Muslim got someone looking at him and learning from him, whether for the bad or for the good, brothers and sisters. However minor you think you may be, a minor player in the game, however quiet you may think you be, if you are a Muslim American, meaning that it can be seen on you, people know that you are this, people are watching you, people are learning from you, not even in a bad way, brothers and sisters. It's actually something good. Let's keep going. So from being complainers, the Imam took us from being complainers to being achievers, from standing on the outside looking in to being inside and running our own show, building our own institutions, building our own masjids and places of worship that speak in the language that we speak and that speak from the context, the historical context, which we can relate to, and the social context which we live in and understand on a day-to-day basis. Okay, looks like I am losing my slides. So I think I'll just share my screen and take this down. Remove from stage, share screen. Okay, thank you, everybody. Here we go. All right. Imam Muhammad never had to use the word in doing what he did. And make sure, yes, okay, it looks good. In doing what he did, you notice that if you ever listen to his speeches, his talks, he never used the word integrate. He never used the word assimilate. He never used the words that we got from the Sikh. He changed all that language into a language of the Quran. And that's the best way that I can put it. He extracted the language of the Quran and he applied it to the lessons that we and the challenges that we're dealing with here in the United States. And he showed us how to repeat this process. So, some of the milestones that I want to just mention for those who may not be as familiar with the Imam or the time period that I'm speaking about. For example, in 1975, to be clear, Imam Muhammad assumed the leadership after the death of his father, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Okay, and so it was really only about a year.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Please stand by. We're having a few technical difficulties, as Imam Amir alluded to a few minutes ago. Inshallah, he will be able to return shortly.
Okay, I'm back. I'm on my phone now. So let me go ahead and if I can,
Welcome back,
up to where
Imam.
I left off, inshallah. Yes, can you hear me, sister? Sister, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can. We can hear you.
Sorry. It's not. Continuing, I'm going to go ahead and pick up, brothers and sisters. I'm sorry I don't have the so it'll just be myself without the slides until I can maybe get that back on. So I was talking about a little bit about the history of Imam W.D. Muhammad and some of the milestones. And I wanted, this is really for people who may be a little rusty on the history. Maybe you're not really sure when sometimes we hear people say the transition, right? What is the transition? Well, the transition was simply when Imam Muhammad took us as a group, and I was born in 75, so let's be clear. Let me be clear here. I'm 50. I was born in 75. The year that the transition happened, I was born. So he was literally building a community that eventually I would come into, and not just myself, but many of us, people my age, would come into. And so for this reason, should we not be thankful? Should we not be appreciative? Why is it that we have no problem talking about the Cowboys or the Chiefs or the whatever the I don't want to rag on anybody's team, but we have no problem talking about teams, and we have no problem talking about the stuffs on TV, but we have a problem recognizing the achievements of the people within our own community who shed their blood, sweat, and tears. So in 1976, the transition happened where Imam Muhammad dissolved the Nation of Islam framework, and the community became, he established the World Community of Islam in the West. And the word Bilalians is used. Sometimes you may hear this word, Bilalians. That's where that comes from. It was kind of a transitional phrase designed to take people from using the language that was rooted in the Nation of Islam to one that was more consistent with the Islamic context. In addition, his approach to teaching changed. Now, he went from language, as I said, not just the language that was rooted in the Nation of Islam, but the concepts, all of the concepts and all of the principles of the Nation of Islam were now transitioned into only, the Imam now transitioned and only teaching Quranic literacy, Quran, and rooting people in the Quran and in the Sunnah. He went into, the 1980s, he began interfaith dialogue. If you look at some of the papers, you can see this is where he began to kind of dialogue with some of the Christian organizations. In 1992, he established his ministry, we now know as the Muslim American Society, MAS. And in 1992, he also led prayer in Congress. And this was the first time that a Muslim imam or minister led the congressional opening prayer, a momentous event. Imam Muhammad did not take us backward. He took us forward. And that's, I think, the one of the main themes about his leadership that I appreciate, and I want to always stress. He wasn't a speaker that was there to entertain you. If you're going for the entertainment, change the channel. He'll make some jokes, but they're going to be really, what he was doing was tapping into our intellect and inspiring us to become thinkers ourselves. Elijah Muhammad. Now, one of the things that is important to understand is that Imam Muhammad didn't just do this of his own thinking. He didn't just come up with this. Let me see if I could share it. I had some photos I wanted to share. Let me see if I can. There we go. I want to share some photos. So here we go. You see this photo? There's two. Okay. Elijah Muhammad intended for a change to take place under his son's leadership. Imam W. Muhammad didn't just come up with this. Now, it would be beautiful. I would love to say, yeah, it was his idea. He came up with it on his own. But the truth is that it was something that had been established beforehand in the lifetime of his father. And this photo is proof of that. Check this out. I was fortunate one day to be able to attend a lecture given by Imam Jihad Muhammad of the Fifth Ward Islamic Center. And he had these photos that he took out. And one of them was this photo right here. And he said, "What do you see in this photo?" And I want to give him his credit, right? I don't want to just take his what he did. I want to, I'm sharing my experience, what he pointed out. He said, "What do you see in this photo?" So we're all staring at it. And, obviously you see three people in it, but look closer. What do you really see? Let's talk it through. So up on the wall, guys, I'm getting an echo over here. Up on the wall, you see Wallace Fard in a photo. And in the photo, he has a Quran, right? Beneath him is Elijah Muhammad. Now, Wallace Fard, you can see him holding the Quran, and right directly underneath him, which would be at his feet. Excuse me, I have an adhan going off. Is Elijah Muhammad, who does not have a Quran. And next to Elijah Muhammad, on his left side, with his hand on his shoulder, is his son W.D. Muhammad, holding what? Holding what? A Quran. So what does this story tell us? The Imam pointed this out. And he said this. If you notice, you'll see that Wallace Fard is kind of handing the Quran to the camera person. He's kind of like pushing it into the image, if you look at that. And it's saying Fard brought the Quran, but not to Elijah Muhammad, because Elijah Muhammad did not teach the Quran. And W.D. Muhammad brought the Quran to the people. Fard brought it to Elijah, but Elijah himself did not teach it. He taught some of the concepts. Of course, he had the principles, he had Islam, he had the word and some of the language, but it was his son, his father's shoulder, indicating that the inheritance was going from Elijah to his son, Fard, W.D. Muhammad, who would teach us the Quran. This image is a beautiful proof of the fact that we were always meant to make a transition. And if you listen to the language of Elijah Muhammad towards the end of his life, you can't help but agree that this was definitely the direction that they were going to go. The courageous transition from racial theology to Orthodox Islam was something that was important and needed to happen. Something that meant promoting the Quran and promoting Prophet Muhammad of Arabia as core aspects of the religion over the racial tones. The Quran and the Sunnah, the emphasis on the universal values of Quranic education became the focus of the Imam's talk, not racial identity. He worked to find a place in the American context for Muslims rather than tell Muslims to separate and leave and abandon and go somewhere else. This was important, and this was one of the greatest blessings that we've all been benefited with over the time. Food for thought. Okay, so we talked about this photo. Here's just a more zoomed in image of that same image. All right. Now it is 1:30. I started a little late, so I'm going to continue to about 1:40, about 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to cut off there, inshallah, bring it to an end. Now, let's talk a little bit about today. Moving forward. His emphasis on universal Islam was a planned action, as I mentioned a moment ago. It wasn't an afterthought. It wasn't just something he came up with on his own. This was something that needed to happen because even Elijah Muhammad knew that people like Malcolm X were beginning to kind of fall out from under the spell of his teachings. His teachings suited a time and a place, but for a more truthful source of information with more building blocks for society needed to be had, which was actually the authentic Quran. All the information was right there in their hands. We just weren't tapping into it at that time. So building bridges. So the Imam took on three important uh, tasks after 1976. The first was to build bridges with the global community of Al Islam. This was very important because up to this time, many people, when they say that Malcolm didn't know there were blonde haired, blue eyed Muslims, that's not really that true. He did know there was such a thing. He did know. He was very well read. He knew that Islam existed in Europe, so there had to be white Muslims, of course. But this was something that was kind of played up so as to create the drama effect that it did. That Spike Lee also emphasized when he made his movie. But Malcolm knew that there were white Muslims and there were, Chinese Muslims and Asian Muslims, all different colors, right? In cultures and languages. But what was not happening up to that point was they were not reaching out and building bridges with these people. And so this is kind of what Malcolm began to do when he made his Hajj. He began to build uh, international links with the global ummah. But this is definitely what Imam W.D. Muhammad has done so far. He immediately set out to connect us to the global community of the believers, including white people, including white people, which was definitely a change. Interfaith dialogue became primary. Talk to your friends and your enemies, right? Don't just talk to your friends, but also talk to your enemies. And don't talk at them, talk with them. Work with those who are willing to work with you towards human excellence, if that is what they profess. In addition, the Imam promoted civic engagement, which meant for us to get out of the masjid and off of the carpet, get out into the communities. He insisted that we not just make Islam a religion, but make it an active way of life that doesn't just support our needs, but it reflects, and helps the communities in which we exist. Let me make it simpler. Don't just exist within the community, be a part of the community. Today, the second part, I want to talk about the relevance of his ministry in our modern era. I have a little bit more than I have time for, as usual, right? So I'm going to hit the high points. Principles that still guide us today. Quranic thought, right? Love it. The community is so focused. I just came from a program today with ILI. It was beautiful to see. We had over something close to 100 people on the call from all over the country, students, children, men, women, older men my age, little kids, all at different levels of learning the religion and excited to do so, happy to do so, and encouraging others to do so. So having developing Quranic thought was an important part of the ministry that we now benefit from, but did not exist prior to 1975. Imam Muhammad introduced a deep tafsir rooted in issues that we talk about today, modern issues, not the schools of thought from 700 or 600 or 500 years ago. May Allah be pleased with those imams and forgive them their sins and give them the reward of their blessing of their deeds. But in our era, we needed things that talked about cars and internet and planes, trains, electricity, the modern challenges that we deal with in our era. In addition, the Imam focused on building communities and institutions. Brothers and sisters, this is one of the most important things. I wouldn't be here if not for this principle. Masjid New Africa Center for Human Development is a result of the attitude of forming masjids, schools, and institutions to service the unique needs of those people who live in our community. is better suited to help solve the problems in the communities where we live than those who live in them, than ourselves. So he really emphasized the model of developing communities, developing institutions, and creating organizations of change and progress in the community. And the last was the development of the universal language. He emphasized dignity, justice, family, and moral uprightness, moral clarity. He taught that man is mind, and he motivated students to tap into their talents and their skills that they did not know that they even had. Allahu Akbar. We thank Allah for the guidance and leadership that He's given us, and we are appreciative of it. And Allah loves those who are appreciative. So today, Imam Dawudi Muhammad has taught us the importance of the Muslim American identity before people knew there was even such a thing. Yes, even today, people still are of some. Many people are of the opinion Islam is foreign. No, 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 no. Islam is as American as Christopher Columbus because Christopher Columbus's whole crew was Muslim. Christopher Columbus wrote in his book. He said in his journal, as his boat went by the island of Haiti, he said, "I looked upon a hill and there was a masjid on it." So these are notes and information we have about history that indicates Islam was here from the very origins, as well as through slavery, as well as even after when laws were passed to bring Eastern Europeans who happened to actually be Muslim into America. So I wanted to see what the phrase Muslim American would result in if I typed it in the computer. So I did a little, not scientific experiment, but just a little thought experiment. I typed in the phrase Muslim American into my search bar just to see what Google thought about it, right? What was its response? What would it pop up? And I clicked images, images. And this is what popped up. Right? This is what popped up. This is very interesting. I thought it interesting. This is just one actual image that it gave me. And some of them I know, right? Some of these are very familiar faces, and others I don't know. Um, and I mean know from history, but no. This is another one. Okay, but look at these images. Look at this image here, for example. I like this one. It popped up, and I put it up here so you brothers and sisters, so you could share, kind of see. Okay, so this was from the year. It doesn't have the year, but it looks really, really old, like the early 1900s. And the brother's name was Mohammed Alexander Russell Webb. All right. And so in this time, when there was no such thing as a Muslim America, he would chop off the Mohammed part, turn that into Mr. MR Alexander. So now you're Alexander Russell Webb. You're very English. It's a very English name, very, European, right? That easy. And that is what Imam Muhammad, and not just Imam Muhammad, but leaders of our era, that is one of the benefits of having the leadership that we have that took us in the direction that made it to where this gentleman, were he born today or came into America today, he doesn't have to change his name from Muhammad. He doesn't have to change his name from Muhammad to Melvin, or his name is Rahim Abdullah. He doesn't have to change it to Richard, Richard Akins or something like this, right? These are the images. Muslims born in America have always had two unique identities, but often one of those identities would be forgotten over time. And as we kind of draw this to a conclusion, I want to make a point. Listen, it's not what's on these pictures, it's what's not on them that really strikes me. The essential lessons here of this little experiment that I did, if you notice, you don't have anyone who claims to be Muslim, but they don't really live it. Everybody that you see in these images, and there was a bunch more, but I didn't really know those individuals, so I just kind of put the ones that I knew we would be a little familiar with. Um, each of these individuals has a identity that can be outwardly known as Muslim. None of them were people that, oh yeah, yeah, that's such and such. He's a Muslim, right? No, no, no. They were people that you look at them and you know it. You look at them, you know it. So part of what it means to be a Muslim American is someone that expresses their Muslim identity in America, does not suppress it or hide it. And this is one of the benefits of the leadership that we have, one of the inheritance that we have benefited from over time. So the essential lessons here, Imam Muhammad settled the question, I think, which is the essential lessons that he really established for us was to follow the Quran and the Sunnah. Be who you are where you are. Back to that phrase again, Muslim American. Why can't it just be American? Yeah, you are just an American when you go vote, I guess. But even there, they ask, what is your race? What is your ethnicity? Right? They got a couple of boxes for that. And by the way, when they ask for your zip code, that's essentially the same thing. Yeah. So there is no just be an American. That's a false kind of it's a false concept. We are all who Allah made us. We are all who you see. So be who you are, where you are. Take the good from that and then leave the bad. And this was essentially what he taught us. Be excellent human beings in your natural context and affect positive change in your community. So alhamdulillah, the ministry of Imam W. Muhammad laid the groundwork for Muslims to see themselves not as foreigners, and this is important, nor as outsiders, but as integral, active parts of American society. And I think I think Barack Obama even popped up. I just didn't want to put him on there. Yeah, he did pop up, but I didn't put him on there, right? Giving an example of those people who were affecting change and being part, even though it's just part of his heritage, right? Part of his heritage, but still, it is speaks of the Muslim community. With African Americans as the largest group of American Muslims, this was a very significant decision. Okay, so he made it on behalf of a people that made up the majority of Muslims in America, even to this day. The largest group of all the people that are Muslim in America, the largest group are African American to this day. We are building rather than trying to figure out who we are. We're building in society. We're building up society rather than sitting around waiting for someone to tell us where our place is in society. A moment ago, I said, who is not on there? People who claim it but don't show it. Yeah, even the computer wasn't fooled by that one. Computer. So a bunch of people I know we were watching, and when I said I typed in Muslim America, probably you were like, well, who would have popped up? Such and such, such. And they weren't up there, right? There were many, many people, but I kind of, like I said, picked the ones that I knew their names. But who wasn't up there was more relevant to me. There were no violent people up there. There were no terrorists up there. There were no criminals. There were no deviants. There were no weirdos. The worst thing you say, maybe, like they had people who have different brands of Islam, so different brands of Islamic thought. That was there. But these were people who lived pious and outwardly Islamic life. Even the computer was not fooled. So I also looked at who is Muslim in America, right? What's going on here? And so these are the basic statistics. 42% of Muslims in America are from here. 42, that means 50% of the entire population in America is actually born here or from here, has roots directly here rather than other places. So that's why this is important. Imagine 50% of all these people abandoning their unique identity in order to try and imitate one of these other small groups of people. What sense does that make? So when we come to the term, what is Muslim American? We simply define it as a Muslim with generational roots in America. So you may be a person who was born to a Muslim family, or you had, like Barack Obama, generational roots. He's not a Muslim, but he has generational roots. Often African Americans They may often be African American, not always, and or descendants of enslaved people. And so this makes our experience unique, and it's important to be attached to this experience so that we know where we're going into the future. In addition, a Muslim American is one born into or reverted to Islam in an American cultural context. Navigating the path forward. And as I'm wrapping up, coming to the conclusion, I thank everybody for staying tuned and having the patience to go through the downs and the ups with me today. The storm, as we say. Navigating the path forward tomorrow. Man means mind. We have to activate our intellect, brothers and sisters. Islam is a sober religion for sober minded people. That means if you have a substance abuse issue, you're going to have to get off that. You got to kick that. You got to get away from that. If you have a habit that's taking you from your character, your practice of the religion, you're going to have to get a hold of that, because Islam is a religion that activates the mind. Islam came to reclaim the intellect of the people, especially in the age of confusion which we exist. Brothers and sisters, where is this battle being fought? I'll tell you where the battle is being fought. The battle is being fought in the place where we have been instructed by our leader, the place where the battle has been fought from the beginning until now, in the hearts and the minds of the people. The U.S. government didn't invent the Heart and Mind campaign. The Heart and Mind campaign was invented by the Quran. They took it out of the Quran. The Masons didn't invent the concept of a universal religion. That was invented in the Quran. They took it out of the Quran. Much of the good that you see in the society in which you live was founded in the Quran, and the name was changed. Much of what we see in society today. So do not be ashamed. Do not be shy. Do not think you're an outsider. And even if you come from another country, you are not a migrant or an immigrant. You are simply a Muslim. What is the nature of Islamic leadership? Islamic leadership must be moral leadership. It must be intelligent leadership, and it must be deeply rooted in the Quran and the Sunnah. This is what Imam W. Muhammad has advised us, and this is what we have seen from the time that he instituted his leadership to the time he's passed. We have seen this approach succeed over and over and over. Brothers and sisters, we must build institutions, schools, farms, media outlet, civic councils, stores, apps, websites, programs, and quality services that serve our needs in the best manner, the halal manner, and in the way that the Quran and the Sunnah has prescribed, inshallah. As I wrap, the last thing I want to talk about is the future, the next generation. Look, three simple points, and then I'm done. Number one, we have to preserve the narrative. If you don't write your history, someone else will write it for you, and you won't be in it. And if you are, you won't be in it the way you want to be. That's what all this rewriting history and taking books out of the schools is about. It's about, in 15 years, you'll have that we thought Trump was the greatest president on earth. That's how the books will be written. And in 50 more years, maybe slavery didn't even exist. Maybe. We don't know, right? Because they're changing the history, and no one will be alive that remembered it. So, preserving the narrative. It's important to document our oral histories, our Islamic histories, our unique histories. Much of what is known about the ministry of Imam W.D. Muhammad is not written down. And each year, we lose more and more of our pioneers, brothers and sisters that were there, that could tell us how it was and keep us on track. In addition, many of his teachings, while they were preserved, they were not published. In addition, even today, oral history is still a huge part of how we learn about our community in the masjid. Therefore, documenting these things, writing books, writing a journal, any type of documentation of what has taken place, including talks like this, are good and help us maintain the narrative. Number two, train new leaders. We got to. This is where I think I know that I fail in tapping into the young, motivated young brothers and sisters that are right here, just waiting really for us to ask them to do something. And finally, expand the community influence by investing in youth, training new leaders, expanding the reach of our community, working with other groups, working with organizations, even if they're state organizations, such as the prison system, for example. You mean, brother, we're going to work? Yeah, we got to work with the system. You can't work against the system. You got to work with the system and in the system. For example, prison. You got to be in there to help them brothers. You can't be mad at those folks. You can't be protesting out front if you want to go inside and help those people. All right. So we got to find ways to work inside of these organizations and bring people to the religion. Find ways to be of service. Actively seek out opportunities within your local communities to make the light shine. And let's get this community growing. Let's provide that moral life, that spiritual sunshine, and that solid foundation, right, of Quranic and Islamic thought, inshallah. So I end with the simple statement: if you understand what I have given you, you have no excuse to fail. This is what the Imam said to us. If you understand what I have given you, brothers and sisters, then we have no excuse to fail. With that, I thank you for your patience and your attendance. For any and all who tuned in, whether on this day or who will tune in later, we are growing. I am growing. Indeed, if I've said anything that's incorrect, please let me know. I have no problem with correcting myself or even being wrong. Um, and if whatever I did say that was incorrect is something that came from myself, it is not from Allah, it is not from Islam, it is not from the Quran. We ask Allah that He accepts all of our efforts. We ask that He strengthens our ummah and our community and makes faith something good and sweet tasting to all of us, God willing. With this, I will go ahead and close out with a dua. There's only one statement. Okay, yes, good, we're good. So with that, brothers and sisters, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wal asr innal insana lafi khusr إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين. In the English, briefly, by the token of time and through the ages, indeed, man is at loss except such as has faith and does righteous deeds and joins together in the mutual teachings of truth, patience, and constancy. With that, thank you, brothers and sisters. May Allah go with you all, be with you, and have a good day. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Imam Amir. Beautiful, beautiful presentation. I tell you what, are you sure they don't have you on the, what's the word I'm looking for, on the platform or on the list to present of the 50th anniversary of Imam Warithuddin Muhammad, inshallah, that's to be held, let me get my notes, in Philadelphia in just a few weeks, because I remember that the presentation that you did today really aligns with the presentation that's going to be held in Philadelphia, inshallah. So alhamdulillah,
Inshallah.
giving us that journey on the history of Imam Warithuddin Muhammad. May Allah be pleased with him.
Yes,
Um,
sister.
yes,
No,
let me.
I'm not on it, but I hope to be there, inshallah. I'm really working to accompany those who may go. So please reach out if whoever wants to go, or if you're just thinking about it, if we can pull our resources, it can still be done. There's still 2 weeks, if not a little bit more than that, right? It's going to be the 1st of August through the 3rd, inshallah.
Yes, sir. Masjidullah in Houston City Avenue in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Again, register now. The IWDM 50, celebrating the legacy, realizing the destiny. And again, you may go to www.iwdmcommunity.com. So, inshallah, alhamdulillah. And I also wanted to say, Imam, there were no comments here in the chat or questions, but in looking at the photographs that you put up, and actually the collage, I was sitting here thinking, how many people can I name in that collage? And alhamdulillah, I could name a couple, not everyone, but most. And also, I want to give a shout out because Imam Fahim Shoaib was in that collage as well. And we want to draw the attention that he is right now in Houston, Texas, as a part of a lecture series. I think it concludes today, this evening, as a matter of fact. He will be speaking later this evening at Mercy Community Center. So go to the Facebook page of Masjid W.D. Muhammad in Houston, Texas. The resident imam is Imam Dr. Wazir Ali. So go there for further information. And again, Imam Fahim Shuaib, he did Talim today at the masjid, and we'll do another presentation, inshallah, this evening. So, alhamdulillah. I love how it all ties in, Imam, how it all ties in. So, thank you again for that.
Thank you, sister.
All right, then. Well, if everyone would just stay with me for just a few brief announcements. Again, join us, inshallah, on Monday night for our chess class, community chess class held at Carver Park, led by Imam Lee. It's from 6 to 7:30 p.m. His phone number is 281-691-3787 for additional information. Please join us again on Thursday night for our Quranic study class. This will be held only in person at the masjid. And again, join us on Friday for our Jummah prayer and at 1:30 and every Sunday at 12:30. And as always, we could not continue to do our outreach efforts without your generous support, no matter how big or how small. We appreciate any and all. You may mail in donations to Masjid New Africa Center for Human Development. The physical address is 7610 Highway 6 in Hitchcock, Texas, 77563. You may make a donation via PayPal or Cash App. PayPal.me/Masjid New Africa or Cash App $Masjid New Africa. And again, as a reminder, Imam Fahim Shuaib is in person in Houston, Texas right now, finishing up the 3-part lecture series hosted and sponsored by Masjid WDM in Houston and Mercy Community Center in Houston under the guidance and leadership of the resident Imam Dr. Wazir Ali. So if you're in the Houston area, please stop by. And if you're not, or just surrounding areas, please head there this evening, inshallah. I believe the last event will be held around 5:30. But again, please check the Facebook page of Masjid Warthuddin Muhammad in Houston, Texas for further additional details. We thank you for joining us today. You could have been anywhere else. And with that, we say have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. May God's peace, Allah's peace be unto you.